they're in no particular order. They were put together by Dr. McElroy students. And so we will begin with question 1. If you do not agree with the candidate you are working for, if you have various viewpoints, for example, how would you go about handling it?
Well, one, I would rethink why I'm working with this candidate. Although I don't have strong views one way or the other on some of the big ticket items, there are some that I am unwavering on. So if we disagree on something fundamental, we wouldn't be in the same room to begin with. Sort of a negative way to start things off. I wouldn't be hired in the first place, probably, because we probably wouldn't jive well to begin with.
I think I echo about what Bobby was saying there is obviously you in many ways aligned with the candidate you're working with. For me, from personal experience, Governor Hutchinson has been somebody who, in 2014, before he was governor, really enjoyed sort of getting thought and feedback from his campaign staff. So you're not going to agree on everything. You're going to differ on certain issues. You're there to provide feedback, advice, and then at the end of the day, he's the one that makes the decision. You back that up as a communications director or spokesperson. You carry that message out. So it's always good. I think it's healthy for the candidate and the staff to have that dialogue. And there will be times you disagree. When you do, that's where you have the conversation.
Yeah, I would echo what Bobby and JR both said, that it is really important to align on a lot of values with the candidate that you're working for, but occasionally there will be times in which there's just a policy issue that you all don't necessarily see eye to eye on, and to echo JR, I do think that it's really important to give that feedback to a candidate, because otherwise you're kind of just working in a bubble, and that's the thing that you probably want to stay furthest away from doing a campaign. And differing ideas are good. That's how you create the best outcomes, and I think that I would really encourage that and embrace it. So, yeah.
I want to back up something that you said. Like, if we're in a disagreement about which is a better restaurant, IHOP or Waffle House, that's a different type of disagreement. Okay, Waffle House has disappeared. Okay. But if it's stuff like that, obviously we can work things out. But just sort of go back to what I was saying. If it's fundamental value-based things, that's one thing. But if it's small things that you can work things through, that's another.
Yeah, I would just echo into what everybody else was saying. So I joined Frank Scott's campaign for the simple fact that he was real big on education and economic growth. So those were the big ticket things that I was concerned about while I was campaigning. So of course we'll have opposing opinions on certain things like Waffle House and IHOP, but those are some things I could pull them to the side from just on a man-to-man type thing and kind of pick his mind as to why he aligned with the policies that may differ from my opinions.
No, that's a really good point. I think, too, there's so much in our society now that, there's Democrat, Republican, Independent, right? And you kind of broken down into parties. But there are so many, if you want to call it parties within parties, right? If you align yourself fundamentally with a lot of the big ticket issues, for Wesley with education and economic development, those are pillars, right? Everything else is sort of fillers in the campaign. And you can have that conversation, that dialogue. And sometimes your feedback, maybe if you're a first-time campaign staffer or something like that, you don't think that your feedback will necessarily go a long way, but it really does a lot of the times. It can help sort of guide the candidate's focus into a certain direction. So it's really, really helpful, but you have to kind of take a step back. It's not just broken into Democrat, Republican, Independent. You do have those personalities and philosophies within those parties, and I think it's always good to have that healthy dialogue.
All right, thank you guys so much for your answers. So our next question is going to be a little more positive and exciting. What is the most exciting part of your job? We'll start with that.
With my current job or like in campaign work?
Campaign work.
I'd say that, election day and victory parties get all the glory, right? the glamorous part. Most people point to that, but my favorite part is the very beginning. You know, there are so many opinions being thrown at candidates or folks that are running to change a particular issue or whatever, that it's difficult a lot of times for candidates to, one, create a focus and then maintain it throughout. My favorite part is the beginning, where we sit down and we do maybe some market research, maybe some opinion research to determine where we're going to focus our efforts, right? We don't change our opinions or our views on things based on research, but it gives us focus so that as the campaign progresses and as we get closer, and things typically get nasty as we get closer to election day, right? Folks are looking for silver bullets to take you out, you know, trying to take you out left and right. But if you can maintain focus, you'll save time and money, and you're more likely to win, I believe, if you've got and you maintain focus, whatever that issue may be.
For me, I think, first of all, I like competition. And I think sort of the heat of a race, especially when you get into the fall, you know, obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it before then, but it's the competition, and it's the fact that your candidate has a vision that you're putting up against the other candidate's vision. And you're basically asking people of Arkansas, and in most of our cases here, you know, which vision do they like more, and what resonates with the electorate here in Arkansas. So that's probably what I enjoy the most, but specifically on communications front, you're going to hear a ton of advice from, you know, 100 different people about how to run a campaign. I think what's fun in a communications role is sort of trial and error. You know, early on, you don't want to be doing a whole lot of trial and error in like October, but doing some trial and error and finding how you can take a message and get that to resonate with voters, and that's really fun to watch. So whether it's through, you know, television, or obviously we'll talk about social media, I'm sure more, but that's just fun to kind of see how people pick up on that. So that's a lot of fun. And one anecdote too, in 2014, I think the only candidate still since 2014 to have part of his platform, a major part of his platform, is computer coding. So that was interesting because most people didn't have a clue what computer coding or computer science education. You know, I'm talking about just the masses of voters in Arkansas. And we had to explain that. We had to explain how it starts in education, and then we can become a tech hub. We can become a smaller Austin. We can bring in talent from Silicon Valley. We can develop and cultivate talent right here in Central Arkansas and across the state. So taking something that was sort of obscure at the time, and then running with it, pushing that message, educating the electorate, and then it turned into one of our biggest issues towards the end. And obviously now we have more than 8,000 students, high school students each year in Arkansas taking computer science. That's up from about 1,040 when the governor came into office, and we're starting to see businesses relocate, taking a look at our workforce. And so it's really, really exciting, but that's sort of like the birth of an idea, and then watching it come to fruition 4 or 5 years later is pretty exciting. So.
Yeah, there are so many exciting things about campaigns that I love. I definitely love the hustle of a campaign. It's very hard work. And I'd say probably the thing that I love most about campaigns is what they call, I guess, the retail politics aspect of it, which is, you know, there's kind of a circuit sort of in Arkansas for campaigns of these festivals that candidates go to throughout the summer and everything. And there you just really, it's the entire time that you spend there, you get to talk with people and really hear about A, how your message is resonating with them, and then B, what they really care about. And I think that probably some of the best policy ideas or outcomes that I've seen happen in campaigns are from that time spent talking with people. And I think it's really valuable, and it's really fun, and it's kind of a step back of the harsher aspect of politics that people traditionally like to you know, put out there, that's all cutthroat and everything. I think that it's a very fun environment to be in, and it's really a genuine way to go about the process that isn't so statistical or polled or something like that. So I think that that's probably my favorite part of the campaign.
To kind of echo what everybody said, what I enjoyed was the grind, so the competitive nature of the campaign, but to kind of veer away from what they were saying, I was like 20, 21, 22 on the campaign, so meeting all the new people and getting all just the connections in general was my favorite part. So just hearing everyday stories from people from the same city as you, but they have vastly different stories of where they're coming from. And so just thinking about that, meeting people like Senator John Lewis, meet people like Miss Elizabeth Eckford from the Little Rock Nine, driving her around, and sitting in a room, and Frank was like, "Oh, that's a Rockefeller." And I'm like, "Oh, Rockefeller, I go to UCA." But yeah, just the connections and the innovation. I'm sure we'll talk about social media later, but just the different innovation we have, the different insight that we get from just business people and other politicians would be my favorite part of campaigning.
Thank you. So continuing on with that question on a more positive note again, what are some best practices that you can give for campaigning?
I'll start and go ahead real short. Yeah, so just understanding your base. We understood that the majority of our voters would come from South of 630 in Little Rock. We knew that we needed to get a target audience of people just knocking on doors. So if you understand your base, know who you're campaigning to and on what medium you're campaigning to them from. So we use a social media app called Minivan. Minivan had everybody who voted in last elections downloaded through this app. So we use Minivan when we canvassed. And then I did a lot of social media, so Instagram and Facebook. And what I realized, and also Randy was another co-campaign field director, and Jay worked communication with Frank Scott, so I had to shout them out real quick. But using the social media mediums, understanding who your target audience is on those social medias. So for me, Facebook, we realized that a lot of older people were engaged with us on Facebook, so Generation X and onward. And with Instagram, it was we had a lot more millennial contacts. So understanding what you needed to post and how to say it to your different crowds, as well as just understanding your strategy. So whenever you got onto the field, you were knocking doors in places that needed to be knocked and not just in the enemy's territory trying to go steal votes all the time.
I said to sort of shorten up what I thought was going to be pretty long. I say the first best practice, and it's always my number one priority in that planning phase, is you've got to be able to calculate a vote goal, your entire plan. Everything that you do revolves around the number that you're reaching for. Okay? You've got to know the number of votes you need to win. Step one, according to me. Everything else, whether it's direct communication, whether it's field work, whether it's external communications, speeches, you name it, everything needs to feed into, and we'll get into this probably a little bit later, in terms of how do we go out and get that number. Because at the end of the day, and I'm stealing this from a friend of mine, Jamie Gates, at the Economy Area Chamber of Commerce, it is a button-pushing contest. Okay? It's a button-pushing contest. I'm passing down that wisdom from Jamie today. People go into a booth and they push a button. How do we get the exact number that we want, hopefully more, to push that button for us? Okay? Calculate a vote goal.
Yeah, so great points, especially just about the base and setting those goals to begin with. I think that's probably the biggest thing is that when you get into a race, it's really easy to get caught up in kind of week to week, month to month, and not looking, towards the actual goal, which is obviously winning the campaign. What I mean by that is whether you're setting the goals for, sort of the number of votes that you're really looking to get, but in our case, in a statewide race, it's so important to have solid people in each county, sort of your county directors that you can fall back on and know that if you have an event there, they're going to get your people out. If you have signs, they're going to put them up. I mean, so basically sort of designating number one for 75, county directors that can help the campaign. And the biggest thing too is not getting caught up in, whether it's polling or, one good week versus one bad week, it's really easy to sort of lose focus in that. So I think basically setting the stage at the very beginning, saying these are our goals, and not losing sight of those throughout not just in Arkansas, on the federal level. Campaigns are getting longer and longer and longer. It's very easy to lose sight of that focus, especially in June, July, August, that sort of time frame. So I think that was great advice, but just basically don't get complacent, don't take anything for granted, make sure you got good people in place, and you're in constant communications with them. So we talk about communications, and I think a lot of people think press and the media from the campaign to the media, but communication is so big just in the entire campaign structure. Make sure everyone knows what the other person is doing, and so you can count on those individuals and have some dependency on them. So it's really a team effort, but that would be what I say, don't be complacent, don't take anything for granted, and don't lose track or focus of your overall goal.
Yeah, those are all great answers, and I really don't have a ton to add. I will echo that I think that one is that a campaign, they are getting longer and longer, and you are in it for the long game, and you're in it for the long haul, and that can be very hard to remember once you hit about June or July, probably. And I think as you're preparing for a campaign, as you're launching a campaign, it's so important. You have to be flexible, but also to have those strategic plans in place. Ideally, a campaign will have one overall strategic plan, but they have some in place for finance. They have it in field, communication, digital. Every aspect of a campaign should be planned out kind of week to week with goals and when you want to hit those goals by. And so you can really track from whether it be a month to month or week to week basis of what you're accomplishing, because otherwise it can feel really easy to feel like you're drowning in the process and in that long haul. And then also I think that, kind of to echo what JR said, the infrastructure of a campaign is really important. And when people think about communications in a campaign, they think about just either the press or the social media aspect or something like that. But also you really have to have people power behind your campaign and an infrastructure all across the state that is explaining that message to people. I wish that, I don't wish that people watch the news all the time, but I wish that the general public perhaps would be a little bit more easily aware of what's going on in politics, and I get that that's kind of not that fun to always sit there and watch, but you do have to have the people power behind your campaign to go out and tell people the message that you're trying to resonate with voters, because that's just as important as any press hit or any social media post you're doing. So.
Yeah, and to what Bobby was saying earlier about getting that sort of vote total in your head, just for some perspective. I wasn't on the governor's 2018 campaign. I did serve on the 2014 campaign, but we had an incredible team, and on basically the first couple of months, they were already getting those sort of projection totals they get in each county. So that kind of goes into what we're talking about, and they did really well, as far as achieving those goals. But going into each county, it's going to we need to get this number. We have this percentage of turnout. It's really incredible. So again, sometimes you kind of go into the West Wing idea of campaigns where it's just you've got a great idea, you've got a great vision, you're going to run, and then people are just going to flock to you. There's so many sort of hoops to jump through before you can have that foundation that can take that message and then spread it across the state, right? So you want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place that you can actually get that message to people. If you don't, it's really hard because, as Abby pointed out, you'd like for people to pay attention a little bit more, but you've got to reach them on every level, and that infrastructure helps you get there.
That's right. Quick pop quiz. You've got 5 people in a room. You're trying to convince them to vote one way. How many votes in a room of 5 people do you need to get? You need a majority. How many votes do you need? Thank you. It's not that hard. See? Calculate vote.
All right.
Well, I think social media has changed everything as far as campaigns go. And I think every election cycle you see sort of social media take over more and more. And it's not just your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're talking about YouTube, where there's more video consumption on YouTube and Facebook than ever before. And so I think when Abby talked about the financial part of the campaign a little bit, that's a huge deal because it's much cheaper to put a video Central Arkansas Media with KTV, KRK, KLRT, THD11, that you can't target an audience. It's more, sort of generalities. You're saying that I believe, due to the research we have, that these ages, these people interested in this, watch the news at this time, and we're going to put our message up on that. Social media allows you to target down to every specific you can possibly imagine to reach those individuals. Do they vote? Are they involved? Do they have a philosophy that's more aligned with your candidate, but really hasn't gotten that involved? How do you reach them? How do you get them out there? So I think I just think social media has changed a lot, not just in outreach, but also how campaigns spend money and how you can reach more people through that. And on the other side of it too, it's just got, in my opinion, worse even in the last 4 years, is just you really have to, sometimes social media is backing, and you have a lot of trolls on social media. So, and they can, it's true that we have a social media director in the governor's office. Obviously, we had one on the campaign as well. You have to look past some of that stuff because they can hijack stuff and make it kind of deflate that individual as far as doing their job every single day. You have to look past it. You just have to remember how you're reaching them, how you're targeting them, and the content you're providing. And so I think that just, it's like the smartest thing that I can't take credit for is obviously social media has changed literally everything from outreach to finances. So I think we'll continue to see that.
I would definitely say that social media has transformed the way that campaigns have taken over, especially in the past, 10, 11 years. And digital, if any of you all are looking to work on a campaign or in kind of the campaign sector, I would say that digital, which includes digital advertising, some social media content, and then digital fundraising, that is the largest group, that is the largest department of campaigns right now, and it is exploding. They cannot have enough digital staff. And I think that kind of what JR said, that has really changed how campaigns target people. It is super effective. If you're standing in line to go vote at UCA and you're a student, they can target that you're a woman from the age 18 to 20 and you see this ad. It goes down to very, very, very precise things. And so it's very helpful to get certain messages in front of people and to know that that they're seeing it. You can see that sort of engagement and that rate. And then I think also on the flip side of that kind of the more positive result from social media is that campaigns are able to share more authentically the process of what they're doing. A congressman from Texas, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, I think that probably no matter what side of the aisle you're on, everyone heard about his Facebook Live. He would go Facebook Live every day on his campaign and basically just keep it on there. And so many people got to see what that process was like and really kind of get more of a feel of what the campaign was all about. And I think that they felt more bought into it. I think that they felt that it wasn't so scripted, it wasn't so cold. And I think that's a really great thing to utilize in a campaign is to allow your candidate to be more authentic with the content that you're putting out there. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. The only thing I really reiterate is social media is more powerful when the field game is prevalent. So a lot of stuff that we posted on social media had to do with what we were doing on the ground. So because our groundwork was efficient, because we were hitting our bases, because we were showing up to public events and forums and things like that, what we had to post was it was easier for us to simply take pictures and put a picture. Oh, this is what we did today. This is what we did tonight. So I say social media is important, but the ground game is so much more important. And when those two things work together, especially today, your campaign can be pretty impactful.
I'll make one more point. I know we're talking about campaigns, but I think just as far as how social media has changed, I think governing across the board for Governor Hutchinson, he loves Twitter. That's his thing. Everything, I don't think he knows Facebook exists, but Twitter he knows and he loves. But I think from communications, not everything happens between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. And I think that, sometimes that's overlooked. You guys have grown up with Twitter and social media, but I think just being able to put a message and push send and reach thousands of Arkansans in national media within a minute is pretty incredible. So it's not like you have to rush back, put together a press release and get it out. The governor can literally say, I've got a thought on this, I'm going to respond, and boom, it's out there. So that's something that's been, I think, pretty incredible in the last probably couple of election cycles, as you see more and more candidates, once they win, they're in that position. You see that conversation and that dialogue on social media all the time for what's going on in Congress. You see members of Congress getting Twitter fights, which is fantastic, to watch that. But it's just interesting how so much of that dialogue now is happening right in front of us in real time. So anyway.
Thank you. So we touched a little bit on the negativity that can come from social media. So how do you go about preparing and or handling criticism and negative press coverage that can happen on or off social media? I had either very bad news or negative coverage.
Can you restate that question?
Yeah, so when it comes to negativity on social media or off social media, how do you prepare or handle negative press coverage?
Most of the time, there's areas to pivot. Get back to to your message, not like a bad way to say that, but whenever it comes to the trolls, depending on what they're talking about, if they say, "Hey, candidate fill in the blank is a goober," what are you going to do with that? I'm not going to engage with that type of person. And in a lot of cases, if it's news coverage, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it's reported incorrectly, and we're able to sort of correct the record sometimes. I know that television and newspaper a lot of times are working on a very tight deadline, and sometimes the quote doesn't get out exactly the way you thought it did. Maybe you were in a hurry and you said something that you shouldn't have that ended up getting quoted. But it depends on the situation and the severity of the situation, what's going on, who's saying it, what the issues are. There's just a wide array of stuff out there, from, like I said, Waffle House or IHOP, all the way down to healthcare or education. It just depends. And that's where you go back to your situation room, and that's where you gather your troops together and work with the candidate to decide the best path forward. So you're really thinking on the fly in some cases.
Well, first of all, on social media, I think you just have to be able to sort of figure out what's legit and what's not legit. You're going to have, we have people that respond to our tweets all the time. It's the same people. They're never going to believe anything that you tell them. They can tell you that if they're saying the building next door is falling down, and you make sure you're out there standing, holding it up, and telling them it's not. It's just literally, they're never going to believe anything that you're saying. So you have to just kind of push that aside, but also make sure you're not missing out on legitimate concerns that can turn into something else. As far as media, I was fortunate to be able to be on the media side and on the political communication side. And as Bobby hit on it, there are tight deadlines. Everybody has a different deadline. Broadcast deadlines are different from print deadlines. And so I think, first of all, taking that into consideration, that they're working tight, they have to get things turned around. A lot of times they're working on multiple stories. So I think it's important that we as communicators are doing everything we can at the beginning to get them the information that they need in a timely fashion, in order for there not to be a case of misinformation or up against the deadline and miss something like that. But also I'll say that I make just as many mistakes, and so it's a relationship you have to have with media. And we are blessed in the state to have an incredible media pool here in Arkansas, especially those that cover the Capitol and what goes on in the legislature and the governor's office. So it's just about having a relationship. If I get something wrong, I want to make sure that I tell them that, hey, I messed up on that. I was wrong. Here's the new information. If there's a story out there that isn't accurate, I feel confident that I can call somebody up and say, hey, just FYI, that's not correct. And for the most part, they'll go back and correct it. It's obviously not great when it's out there, because most corrections in the paper are on the second page at the bottom. You can't find it. But But it's good just to have that dialogue and that relationship because, again, you're going to need them, they're going to need you. And so I think it's just important to keep that healthy. And I mean, here's the thing, like, as far as bad news stories, they're going to happen. You know, what I can't stand, and there are a lot of communicators like this that get so fired up over a bad story that you're willing to burn a bridge with a reporter. Like that, most of the time, it's not intentional. And I think that that's so important. Just work through it. Don't freak out. There's going to be really great stories. There's going to be bad stories. It's just sort of the nature of the job. It's just upon us to either correct the record or do everything we can leading up to that story that we can sort of eliminate any risk as far as a misquote or something like that. So anyway, it's just sort of give or take. And again, she mentioned the long haul earlier about campaign. When you get into office, it's the same way. You're doing the same thing every single day. Don't allow one thing to turn into. Don't allow one story to turn into 2 or 3 or 4. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think in terms of a bad news story that if it's a mistake that you made or if it's just something bad that happened turns into a bad news story, your relationships with the press are very, very important. And I also think that it's important on your end to be very organized with all of the information that you have and everything that you want to communicate in order to be transparent with them. And I think that that's probably, in most cases, the best way to handle that and to have just the best outcome. Like Jay said, it's going to happen. It's probably inevitable, but I think that on your end, knowing that you are being as transparent and truthful and organized as possible is the best way to handle that. And then on social media, I don't have a ton to add other than I love Twitter. I'm on it constantly, but Twitter is a vacuum and it's a bubble. And don't take it too personally if you're the person controlling those accounts. And obviously don't ignore legitimate concerns that there are just droves of people talking to you about this one topic and really trying to communicate to you that there's a problem. But for the most part, I just would try and stay positive and certainly don't engage with anything.
Yeah, I just second what everybody else has said. First, I start off with, does this deserve my attention? Is it worth it? Once you figure out if it is or isn't, calling your team together, analyze what was said, and who said it. That's another big thing. Analyze what was said and who said it. Based off of that, get together a way to release the next message that y'all have come up with together. So with the most transparency as possible, like Abby said. So that's pretty much it. One of the biggest things is who said it, and like they were saying earlier, making sure that you the best way possible keep those relationships with the press going, because you want them on your side in a lot of situations.
Target audience of likely voters, if it's in a primary, a general election, whatever, you know exactly who you're talking to, right? You're in control of that message. Yeah, they might throw it in the trash. People say that all the time. Why do I need to spend money on mail? But you know that while they're on their way to the trash, they may glance at something. They're going to spend just as much time before they throw it away as they'll see your post on Facebook, right? But for those that do care, and you built your list of people that care, whether it depends on how you're targeting, what your voter model ends up looking like. So they're going to spend at least a second with it before they throw it away. And that's up to the designer. Then let's make a compelling piece with a compelling message to connect with these people that we spent all this time thinking about, right? That's what I would go with. Some people say it's too expensive, but I believe if I had to pick one, that would be the most effective.
Especially in local races, direct mail is really important. I think if it was a federal level, I would say social media, just because, again, I think just more and more people, we've got like 50% of the world has some sort of social media. So I would go with that on the federal side. Now, I'm going to contradict what I said earlier about not being able to target. well, actually, I'm not contradicting that. You can't target specifically with local TV. However, Arkansas, and it's always been the case from literally everything, but it's always kind of comes around a little bit slower than the rest of the nation. And so right now I would go with TV. I think that you pump money into Northwest Arkansas, Central Arkansas, the South Arkansas, and Northeast. I mean, really pump local TV stations with your ads, and they're going to run, they're going to see it, and it makes a huge difference. And I think obviously, who knows, next 10 years, maybe it won't make as big of a difference, but I can tell you right now that 2014, 2018, that's where you wanted to spend your money was on local television in Arkansas. It just makes a world of difference. And a lot of the electorate, which is usually older voters, they have their TV station. They've watched it. Sometimes it's generational. Your mom and dad watch the TV station, so you watch the TV station. And people, it's just sort of clockwork. People watch local television, at least right now in Arkansas. So if I had to pick one thing right now for Arkansas, it would be TV.
Yeah, I think those are both great answers for sure. And this one might be a little bit optimistic, but Wesley actually mentioned it earlier. It's called the VAN. It's the Voter Activation Network. The VAN is a Democratic program. I'm not sure what it's called on the other sides, but it's basically just a log of all of the voters in Arkansas and some statistics on them, and it has their address and their phone number. And that is the main tool that campaigns use, or some variation of that tool, in order to contact voters. And I think that whether you're running for a state rep race or you're running for United States Senate, that engaging voters and having those real conversations with them is the most valuable thing that you can be doing. And it's also proven, time and time again, that field campaigns are really what drives. They're what drives turnout. It's how you win a campaign. I think that probably most people say that about 70% of your campaign should actually be field work, and I'm a big believer in that. And so I think that I probably could not do a campaign without the VAN or some sort of voter access program. So
Yeah, I'm with Abby 10 times out of 10. The VAN was so important to us. Even during early voting, when we were standing at the polls, we seen a lot of people who just knocked on their doors, and that got them to come out a lot. TV was also real big, like JR said. A lot of times we knocked on the door, oh yeah, we seen him on TV, or and mail was also real big too. I think with mail, we saw a lot of mail still left in the mailbox. But yeah, that minivan app was real big for us, and I go with the minivan just canvassing 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I think you can tell, obviously the question is you take one thing, but I think just in these answers you can tell that it takes so many different things coming together to have a successful campaign.
Yeah, because you can't run mail if you don't have some sort of voter portal or access network. You can't build a voter model to deliver that without tools. It's fine.
Thank you. So in regards to the campaign process, you already have some similar answers to this one, but what seems to be the most critical time during a campaign?
Well, I love the beginning, right? But I also love the end. Well, everybody loves the end, but I don't know. It's sort of neck and neck with me. The beginning because of the planning of it. I love that piece. But at the end, when it comes back to what I said earlier about focus, built that plan in the beginning, but it's like maintain that focus. And as like our nerves are getting crazy, oh my gosh, I don't know if we're going to win or not, and your candidates sort of getting flustered because somebody at the coffee shop said that they heard so-and-so was doing good at some other coffee shop, Those are my two favorites. Again, back to just keeping people focused and keeping people engaged and on message and not get distracted by all the distractions that are out there.
Yeah, maybe this is a cheat, but I think the entire time is critical. I think it's really hard. It's easy to say when you get into the fall, because that's the excitement, right? Your candidates are going to football games, there's fall festivals, and you're going out there, there the debates that take place. So it's easy to say that that's the most critical time, but the beginning is critical. You want to get out there and put your message out there and paint the picture of your candidate and tell their story before another candidate can, or you want to get your fundraising in place and start really finding those folks that resonate with your candidate, because you got to have funding. And so I think, it's not really answering the question, but I think the entire time, each aspect of the campaign is critical. And I think it's just, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, it's easy to lose sight of your goal. But if you bring, every sort of break it into quarters of a campaign, that every quarter you have a sense of urgency. You've got to accomplish those goals. I think Abby said this earlier, but each week, each month you have goals. You have to have urgency in meeting those goals. So I would say probably all aspects of the campaign, all timing is critical, not to lose that momentum that you have, or in order to get that momentum back.
I would echo both of those. I think that they're going back to having a strategic plan and sticking with it, that every moment in a campaign is critical, and making sure, again, that you're reaching those goals and having those accomplishments along the way. I would say that it does, kind of what they both said, it does feel a lot more critical if we're working on like a November to November timeline, that it does feel a lot more critical about the time that you hit August, that you're just landing everything and getting everything right. But again, I think that a lot of that comes from preparation, a lot of that comes from strategy and getting it right. And so I would say that that's, if I had to pick a point, I think that August is really just when your campaign needs to be locking it down and going towards election day.
Yeah, I also agree. August is when stuff starts. You could feel like changes. You see different candidates' signs start going up in August, and the excitement and the thrill starts to get different around August. But the most critical time to me would have to be, like Abby was saying, from that 1st November until like August. So your initial groundwork, did you execute? Did you cross all your I's and dot your T's, or however you say it? Did you do all of that? Did you do all of that? Did you make sure you did all of that? Because the fruit starts really showing up in August, and around November, that's when it gets real. Well, really Octoberish, it gets real hectic again. But that beginning phase, the exploratory phase, and building your team and your strategy, that's so important.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Let's give our guests a round of applause. With that, we're going to open up the floor to audience questions for about 10 minutes or so. So